Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 482 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, as I travel the country speaking on college campuses from Maine to California, I see problems that need solutions. I'm talking about homelessness. I'm talking about mass killings. I'm talking about global warming. The answer to all of these problems, you know where they're going to be discovered? The answers are going to be with today's youth. It's going to be with Gen Z. They are extremely motivated. They want to fix the world, and they genuinely care about these issues. So when I heard about this new book, it's called Badass Solutions, or today's big ass problems, I knew that we needed to have the author on our podcast to share his insight with our college student listening audience. As the founder of Francis Development Inc., Mitch Francis developed shopping centers, office buildings, and condominium projects. He continues to own and manage commercial properties throughout the United States. He was actually a real estate major at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and he has a California real estate broker license, which he absolutely doesn't use, just like everybody in the state of California. Mitch was the founder, the chairman, and CEO of a small publicly traded company for nearly 30 years. The company was initially involved in creating and operating 3D motion simulator attractions in the United States and Canada, utilizing the most advanced technologies of the day. Subsequently, the company became the largest ticket broker in Las Vegas, selling more than $1 billion in show tickets, attractions, and dining. Mitch is an innovative business leader whose inventions have yielded 4 U.S. patents, with another 3 inventions currently patent pending. I can't wait to hear about those. All of those inventions have contributed to the success of his unique businesses. Mitch believes that the 2 most important ingredients for success as a serial entrepreneur, just like me, are superior skills and problem solving, number 1, and 2, unshakable tenacity. I love it. Welcome to the show, Mitch.
Thank you, Mike. I feel like we could sign off. You just said everything I know about myself.
Listen, if you need me to introduce you on stages across the country, I'm available. Just pack me up in a suitcase and send me around the country. Let's go.
You're perfect. Thank you.
So listen, we need to talk about one of my favorite campuses in the country, the University of Colorado Boulder. Boy, oh boy. I mean, they have a wonderful fraternity and sorority community, certainly a very successful Sigma Pi chapter that I've worked with over the years, with a beautiful house there. And that's where you landed for your undergraduate college experience. So tell our audience, why did you decide on Boulder?
Well, there were 3 reasons. I'm from Denver. I grew up there. So I had in-state tuition. Number 1 was fantastic. 2, interestingly, I was actually one of the first real estate majors in the country. It just didn't exist. You were like a business major or an accounting major, but they didn't have a real estate major until almost the mid-70s, actually. And there were really only 2 universities that I found that had it. One was the University of Pennsylvania at Wharton, and one was University of Colorado. Well, Colorado was much more affordable for me. So I went there. And then the 3rd reason is I was actually a professional skier. So I was able to teach on weekends and holidays up in the mountains, pretty close drive to Boulder. So just picture me studying on chairlifts.
You were doing no studying. Be
studying
honest.
on chairlifts.
You were not studying on the chairlift, I promise you. Well, that's a great story and certainly makes a lot of sense. And it's a fantastic institution. I mean, everybody that I know is just absolutely in love with the university. Certainly a very fun college scene. They have their share of fun there. You got the mountains there for skiing, which is absolutely wonderful. So a lot of really good things to do, and beautiful part of the country.
It was great. It was great to go to school there.
Yeah, it really is.
And
Now,
I learned.
Go ahead.
And I learned something.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, listen, you certainly paid enough. Even if it was in-state tuition, you still paid something. So I hope you learned something out of
I did.
it. So you were the founder and the chairman and CEO of a small publicly traded company for nearly 30 years. And then it somehow evolves to become the largest ticket broker in Las Vegas. So what was this ride for you being the CEO of a publicly traded company?
Uh, it was an interesting ride. I have to say that even though we were small, we had all the same problems of big public companies. We had corporate raiders, and we had debt financing instruments, and we had green mail and all kinds of threatened litigation over things that we did nothing wrong. But these basically raiders, hedge fund managers, think that there's something good, that should belong to me. And we had for almost 30 years, we just kept fighting people, companies who, I hate to say it this way, but kind of tried to take what we created. And big companies do that. Disney just fought off a corporate raider, who wanted to take over their board with seats and control. And what's interesting, a lot of these people have absolutely no expertise in the business that they're actually trying to take over.
Mm.
So it's one of the areas of problems that I actually put in my book about the stock market, the stock exchange. And I actually called the chapter "Close the Casino."
Mm.
So it's a big problem that we have, and we need places for good people to invest their hard-earned money, and not have these games that are played with our money.
Yeah, that's certainly something to consider when you have a company that's successful and thinking about going public is, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of lawsuits and people trying to take you over. And you got to really wonder, is it really worth all of it? It's just a lot of headache to me.
It really is, truly.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Well, listen, that must have been just a fascinating ride for you, and you can say that you've done it, which is very cool. But yeah, I'm going to take my private company, and that's going to be it for me. Just no intentions of ever going public.
You're
Um,
much smarter, you're much smarter than I.
yeah, there's no way because I know what's involved, and
Yeah.
it's just I just don't see the payoff there for me.
No.
But hey, listen, everybody's open to their own adventures, and so certainly a learning experience for you. Let's talk about that book. It's called Badass Solutions for Today's Big Ass Problems. It's a nonpartisan book, and it talks about all of these problems that nobody is paying attention to. So, what made you want to write this book?
Well, there was actually almost exactly 2 years ago, there was a family tragedy. You might remember that there was during the Fourth of July parade in a suburb of Chicago. There was a crazed young man with assault rifles who killed 7 people,
Mhm.
just watching the parade. And one of them was my brother-in-law's brother.
Oh,
And of course, I was with the family, and I knew this guy real well, and he was just the greatest guy. He's fun and brilliant and loving, and just everybody loved this guy. And that he was snuffed out for no reason is just a horrible tragedy. And you can imagine the hurt of the family and all. And it left me pissed. Actually, I was angry, and I started realizing all these major problems that we have in our country that that seem fixable, but nobody's fixing them. And I've always been sort of a news hound, and interested in current events, and I just kind of naturally solve problems. Well, how do we get rid of assault rifles? How do we stop the ocean levels from rising? All this kind of thing. And I actually had answers for most of them. And I decided I'm just going to write an outline and see where this takes me, because I want to do something. I want to get active. And I looked at this and I said, oh my gosh, this is a book. And I had no intention of writing a book. And that's what this became, was Badass Solutions. I've got 20 really doable solutions, logical solutions to 20 of our biggest problems. Everything from homelessness to mass killings to immigration, to paying off the entire debt, closing the casinos. I solved really major problems, and it's interesting. I hope your audience will find it interesting that these solutions can be done. And they didn't have to be, from a political side. The political people are just fighting each other just because they're on the other side of politics. And I don't take that direction. I don't want politics in this. I'm only interested in what will work. And I was able to come up with things that are pretty exciting, and I've been getting a very good response about it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's fantastic that you're tackling these big problems and you're not shying away from them. One of the presentations that I talk about on college campuses today is literally problem solving, just teaching students the skill to solve any problem in the universe, whether it be in their fraternity on a college campus at Boulder or in a big corporation, a big publicly traded company. The process of solving problems is essentially the same, no matter what problem we're talking about. And obviously the solutions are going to vary, and the root causes are going to vary for each one of these things.
Yeah,
But yes, we can solve them. And I love the approach. I think college students today, I think they're really going to be refreshed by this idea that, yes, we can solve difficult problems. We absolutely can. Is it going to
that's
be
right.
easy? No, but that's okay. It doesn't mean that it stops us from trying to solve it. And at least
And the
somebody
also
is
thing is they
trying.
have to know, Mike, they have to know they're going to have problems.
Yeah.
Roadblocks are thrown in the way of every business person. You know this as well as
Oh,
I,
sure.
at every step of the way toward your goal.
Mhm.
And you've got to figure out, how do I get over it, through it, around it, no matter what. And that's problem solving. You've got to not be dejected by problems, because you're going to have them.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got to overcome them to be successful. And Mike, you're so right. I had business problem solving skills.
Mhm.
And when I applied that toward real world skills away from business, it was the same process. It worked really well.
Yeah, good entrepreneurs, this is exactly what they do. So you and I certainly come from a similar mindset. Just people who are serial entrepreneurs, we look at everything as a problem that needs to be solved. So for us, this is quite normal to kind of try to fix something like this and perhaps turn it into a business, turn it into a book like you have, or who knows what. Now, let's talk about one of these problems. One of them is this US deficit that climbs every single day. Neither party is actually doing anything to fix this. The last time we had a surplus, Bill Clinton was in office.
So
Okay,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is a fact. Okay,
Bill
so
who?
how do we address this issue so our grandchildren are not stuck with this huge bill? I think we're literally killing our country with this deficit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's fixable. All of these politicians and news people are running around with their hair on fire, that we have this massive deficit, and yet none of them are talking about, well, what do we do about it? A couple of them every once in a while say, oh, well, let's spend less. Oh, well, let's tax more. We're in so deep, we need something stronger. We need a much bigger pill than that. Um, you touched on it. Last week, we became $35 trillion in debt from 34.
Mhm.
And the debt is going up $1 trillion every 100 days. Our country is literally drowning in debt, and particularly interest payments. Interest payments have now become our third largest payment that the government has to make. We're paying more in interest on the debt than defense. It's horrifying.
Wow.
But we can fix this. We really can do something about this. And in my book, I really address what we can do, that we can pay off the entire debt almost immediately and ensure that it never happens again. And if you're interested, I can kind of go into a little bit more detail if you have time.
Yeah, let's go. Let's hear it.
All right, let's go. Let me throw a question to you and your audience. It's not a test. You're not going to have to even answer, but just think about this. What we just talked about, the U.S., everybody says the United States is bankrupt. Well, we hear that like every day.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this: if the U.S. is bankrupt, how is it possible that we also have the strongest economy in the world?
Great question.
And if the U.S. is bankrupt with $35 trillion in debt, why are U.S. securities the safest investment in the world?
Mhm.
This doesn't make sense. However, all of us maybe can't put our finger on the answer, but we feel it in our heart. Guess what that is? The US can't default on its debts because the US is so big, so powerful, and has so many assets. That takes us to a different issue here. For most of the country's history, we operated on what was called the gold standard. And the gold standard basically meant that the United States could print paper money that was equal to the amount of gold that it had stored at Fort Knox.
Right.
Kind of interesting concept. You can print paper money if you have the assets in back of it. And it was so pure that at some point in time, Americans were actually able to exchange paper money for gold.
Mm-hmm.
That's how true this concept was.
Mm-hmm.
And we went off of the gold standard during the Nixon administration. However, catch this. What I just said about, we all know that there's much more assets than just gold. By all accounting practice, that hopefully your students are learning. By all accounting practice, the US has massively, hundreds of times more assets than just its gold. The US owns vast amounts of land, has gold reserves, oil reserves, mineral reserves in that land. It has buildings and ships and the military and jets and schools and buildings and hospitals, just on and on and on, where the country, the US, has assets. So now I call this, instead of the gold standard, the asset standard. And if we look at this, even from traditional accounting perspective, the US has all these assets. Let's use the same thinking as when we were on the gold standard. The US can write checks, literally, against those assets. Now, let's just say we send a check for $1 trillion to China, because that's how much they have of our debt.
Mm-hmm.
And let's give them a thank you note. Thanks very much. Here's your $1 trillion back.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, will they cash it? Of course they'll cash it. China and your Aunt Betty are going to run to their bank and deposit that check. And will it clear? Well, it will clear, because it will be drawn on the Federal Reserve Bank. The Bank of the United States will clear the check. It sounds simple, but it is in reality correct. And it's even correct in accounting principles. So I do say this with a caution that I do think we can only use this magic wand once. Because you know our politicians, they'll just keep spending money. Oh, we can just keep writing checks, fine. We'll just keep spending money.
Exactly.
Eventually, that will hurt the country. It will be inflationary. It will hurt the U.S. dollar.
Yep.
We can only do this once. Fix the country, overfund it so that we take care of Social Security, our underfunded programs that need money. Fund great public schools. Right now we have an opportunity. Take care of business and then shut it off. So I think along with doing the asset standard, we should have a constitutional amendment that the U.S. government has to have a balanced budget, cannot spend more than it brings in from taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Problem solved.
Yeah, it sounds very reasonable to me. I worry about, in your example, the inflation. That's what I worry about, and certainly politicians, just like you said, they love to spend money that doesn't belong to them. So I mean, that is the big thing. How do you do this just once? They're going to go back to that well. And once you open up Pandora's box, they're going to go back to it. I'm telling you what's going to happen.
No, you know what? There's a difference. Okay.
Yeah.
In paying off the debt, you're actually their money back. They gave their own money to the U.S. You're giving it back to them.
Yes.
That's different than most government programs where they're out buying goods and services in the economy. That is inflationary. Whereas this is pretty minor inflation if you just give people their money back. And where inflation could enter in that is because they're going to look for other investments.
Right.
They've got this, they get their $1,000 back from U.S. Treasuries. Well, now they've got to buy stocks or do whatever. But it does add money operating through the system, a lot of it. But like, the money we pay China, that's not coming back in our economy. That's not inflationary.
Mhm. Yeah, they're
So,
going to look to make some investments in that. It could be that they want to buy buildings or land and things like that. So that could be where that money is ultimately put. Maybe we need to let's look at another issue. Let's look at this abortion issue. This is a big one in the upcoming election. So how do we resolve it for both Democrats and Republicans? I mean, this is a key issue, I feel, in this upcoming election.
well, there's a very interesting statistic that I found, Mike. The Centers for Disease Control for the United States, the CDC, issued a report that nobody talks about. And I found it just digging that 94% of all abortions occur within the first 15 weeks of gestation.
Mhm.
Are you kidding me?
It's a big
That
one.
means that we have this civil war for 50 years in our country that is just the fanatics on both ends fighting about 6% of abortions
Mhm.
because 15 weeks to allow abortions is pretty much agreeable to all sides except the most extreme. You remember the word compromise?
Mhm.
That's how you get things done in government, in business, in anything. Well, I've rarely seen in my whole life a compromise that could achieve 94% compliance, happiness. So I think, once again, that might sound kind of simplistic, but the reality is, why is nobody talking about this? Would they rather fight? It kind of seems that that's the answer. Here's a simple thing. If all parties agree, and they seem to be on that track for a different reason for 15 weeks, and I'm talking about extreme groups of pro-choice and pro-life are pretty much in agreement on 15 weeks. It's like problem solved.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's exactly where we're headed. So maybe we do get to problem solve. Each party I feel is like so dug in, and it's hard to get to compromise these days. I mean, it's such a rare thing. You and I grew up in an era where we saw a lot of politicians compromise on issues and working together across the aisle. I just feel like today it's like unheard of. It's just almost never see it. And so we got to get back to compromise. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's business 101. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is oceans rising from all of the melting polar ice caps. I used to live in New York. I used to live on Long Island. We had all kinds of storms and other things, and we started seeing rising tides. And I started thinking to myself, I mean, is it possible that Long Island could be completely underwater one day? Could it happen in the state of California? I'm sure you're thinking about the same thing. I ended up moving to Nashville, a little bit more kind of center of the country. So, is there a solution to the rising tides in the ocean?
There really is, and this is probably one of my more I think exciting solutions. The global warming is causing the polar ice caps to melt at a rate that would fill 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools every second.
Wow.
By the end of the century, like you just said, all coastal cities and islands are going to be flooded. A snorkel is not going to help you. But in my book, I detail how we can actually stop the ocean levels from rising and use all that fresh water for the billions of people who live in the most parched areas of our world. So not only can we stop the ocean levels from rising, we can use that fresh water that's melting from the ice for hunger and thirst for people who are desperate in our world. And it's very exciting that we can and should solve this.
Hmm. Wow, that sounds like a cliffhanger that I need to read your book in its entirety to figure out how you're going to do that. It sounds absolutely fascinating.
Well, I can give you a
Wow,
sentence or two if you want, or you want to
yeah,
go.
give me a sentence or two. How do we do it?
Well, I discovered uh, that the melting ice is just a fraction of the water that's going into the oceans from just our 20 largest rivers.
Hmm.
The rivers get water from, rain and snow and then deposit it, along its path, for farming, for irrigation, for people to drink. And then whatever's left over gets dumped in the ocean. But that's an enormous amount of water. Believe it or not, the amount of ice that's that's melting equals only 7% of the water going into the ocean from just our 20 largest rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So if we channel 7% of the water from those major rivers and distribute them to arid lands, we can save the planet and save our most desperate people from hunger and thirst. It's an amazing thing. It'll cost a lot of money. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
But can you imagine? This is a socioeconomic catastrophe that we're headed for millions, tens of millions of people who are going to be moved out of their homes, their offices, their commercial buildings. They're going to be just underwater. We've got to start doing something, and it's going to be expensive, but there's also a benefit. This is a rare solution that not only solves a problem, but cures another problem. I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. As somebody who went to school at the University of Buffalo and was very close to Niagara Falls, it's going to be very expensive what you're proposing, because I understand what we're talking about here. It's going to be extremely expensive, but if we can solve world problems in the process, then maybe it's worth that expense, right?
Yeah, so there's a model for this now.
Yeah.
That's for decades. There's a project called the Central Arizona Project that moves water from the Colorado River 336 miles to Phoenix and Tucson to give fresh water to those 5 million people. This was done 50 years ago. And the cost is like immaterial versus the benefit to having those 5 million people thriving in an area that's like the middle of a desert. So we can do this on a global basis.
Yeah. Listen, I think you're onto something. And I've seen there are various movies out there that talk about the future currency is going to be fresh water, right? And you start thinking about Las Vegas and other areas that really, really need it and depend on it. And if they don't have it, I mean, forget it. What does Las Vegas turn into if you don't have fresh running water, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable to think about. Well, the name of the book, of course, is Badass Solutions for Today's Big Ass Problems. I absolutely love the premise of it. I think it's fantastic. The other thing that college students, I think, that are very, very nervous about is just the being able to afford a home. The housing prices right now are absolutely outrageous. The interest rates are high. How can we make that American dream a reality for all the young college students who are listening?
Well, it's a huge problem, and it should continue to be the goal of college students of all Americans, because it's the best benefit of living in America, that and 401k plans. So yes, save your money, live with your parents, get a down payment, and get into the housing market. But the biggest problem that we're having in our country is there are so many barriers to new development. It's like a dirty word. Oh, they're going to, real estate developers going to build houses, but not in my backyard. We don't want it over here. It's called NIMBY, not in my backyard. And we've got to get past that in the United States, because remember the simplest rule of economics is supply and demand. When you have constricted supply and a lot of demand, prices are high.
Right.
The reverse is absolutely as true. If you overbuild, which always happens, it runs in cycles. If you open the floodgates for developers to build, they overbuild. Well, prices go down. So please encourage your governments, your local governments, not to get in the way of new housing, apartments, houses. The more we build, the cheaper and more accessible it's going to be for everybody.
Yep, absolutely true. No question about all of that. I love it. Well, thank you so much for providing those solutions and engaging in that conversation and daring to solve some of the biggest problems that we have as a country. And, I do love great food. This is my weakness and my problem. So the next time I'm in Los Angeles, where should I be going in order to get a great meal?
You're going to come with me
All
because I'm
right.
going to take you
All
to
right.
my favorite restaurant in Los Angeles. And this is like the easiest question you've asked me. There's a fantastic Chinese restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, in Chinatown, right by Dodger Stadium.
Nice.
And I've been going there so long, I'm on the third family generation running this restaurant. It's absolutely incredible. If you go with more than four people, you get a Peking duck. It's the best thing you've ever had in your whole life.
Nice.
Their signature dish is called slippery shrimp. I dream. I mean, I dream about this. It's incredible. So
What's the name
please,
of the restaurant?
it's well, but then you won't have me go with you.
I will. I will. I'm going to call
It's
you.
called
We're going to go. I just need to know the name of the place.
It's called Yang Chow, Yang Chow, Chow, Yang Chow, which is a province in China.
Yeah.
I promise
Delicious.
you'll be happy.
I'm sure I will be. There's no question about it. I will go with you. I won't just go by myself. I'll go
You
with
bet.
you next time I'm in LA and we'll check it out. I just want to support, these restaurants. So many of these small family shops like you're talking about, they went under, especially during the pandemic, and they're under all kinds of pressure right now. And so, this is kind of my way of just keeping some of these family restaurants going. Just give them free advertising. Send a bunch of college students that are hungry to go get some Chinese food and support that business to
Yeah,
make
well,
sure that they're
for
still
you.
there for the next generation of kids after you.
I applaud what you're doing. That's a really good thing.
I
Yeah.
love it. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to buy your book or they want to get you to come and speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
They can go to the website for the book is called badasssolutions.com with the hyphen. And they can find the book on Amazon. Just type in Badass Solutions with or without the hyphen or Mitch Francis. And you can get the book.
I love it. All right. So go check out the website. It's bad-asssolutions.com, or just go onto Amazon, look up Badass Solutions by Mitch Francis, and go and pick up this book because you are the answer to these problems. And I know you're going to solve it because I believe in you. This is why I've dedicated my life to speaking to college students, because I know that if we give you some guidance and we give you some possible solutions, you'll run and execute it beautifully. So, go and get this book. And Mitch, thank you for writing it. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you having me, Mike. It's been fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to our audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Mitch, I want you to like it on social media and share it with other college students that are trying to solve some really difficult problems, because I know you're going to solve it. And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.